Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to listen up to Menace's Mic Podcast. We rollin'! Yeah!
Yeah! Another episode of Menace's Mic. It's your boy Michael the Menace Johnson. Do-rag on today. So my alter ego, I'm Maurice Jerome Johnson from East St. Louis. I talk like this, motherfucker.
Did you say Maurice?
Hold up, son. Hold up.
Maurice Jerome. What's up, Maurice? Can I call you Mo?
Mo.
Or
No,
call you Mo?
there's too many Mo's. On the left of me, G. Jones coming
what up,
in.
Though? What
We're
up,
minus
though?
Bones the GOAT, but we have another GOAT in the building, and that's Corey Peacock, the professor, strength and conditioning coach, famous
Doctor,
professor from Nova. What's up, Corey Peacock?
What's going on, guys?
man, you look good on TV. Look at those arms on TV, Mike.
Well, I've been
Damn,
trying.
you have been
They
lifting
look
a little
strong,
bit,
a
man.
little bit. I've been trying, but I appreciate you guys having me on. This is going to be fun.
Right?
Yeah, welcome.
I've been a big fan of the show,
chop
so we'll
it
see
up.
what's up.
Yeah, we got a watcher, a viewer.
That's right.
Nice. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, people, if you don't know, me and Corey have done 17 fight camps together.
Yep.
We just talked about this. I'm going to my 30th UFC fight in May. So that's half my career.
Yeah, it's been a kind of a wild journey. Like we were talking about, different capacities of those. Like I think our relationship sort of grew. We had another great strength and conditioning coach, Jake Bonacci, probably the best in my opinion in the MMA world.
Good.
From the start to finish. I'd still give him the credit as kind of the GOAT in this strength and conditioning performance aspect. But yeah, I mean, when you and I started out, it was Edson Barbosa, and realistically, I didn't know you too well. I think I
Damn,
just
y'all
did.
old, man.
Yeah, I mean,
That
you were
was
there too.
around when me and you first kind of
That was my first camp with you.
Yeah, you were there too.
When was Benil? Benil was after Edson?
Right after. I think it
probably
was the
yeah.
next fight.
Okay,
After,
yeah,
two
so
fights
shit.
after,
Damn, we're all old.
Right. And so, like when you and I started, right, it was the physiology. It was just the
testing.
Yeah, all the
that you
testing
did
and
at
stuff
the
like
university.
that. Right. We did all the testing stuff, and then that was given over to Jake, and then Jake and I had a lot of communication back and forth, looking at, heart rate monitoring, all the good stuff that we were doing for your camp. But
So what are your credentials
cool.
from Nova, if you let people know how big of a nerd you are? And he is my friend / coach.
And he's a nerd.
And he's a nerd.
And he's a nerd.
So,
all right, so quick credential, PhD in exercise physiology. I am the chair and program director for health and human performance at Nova Southeastern University. Okay. So within the university, we have exercise science, sports science, so both undergrad, masters, and we also have two different laboratories. So we have what's coined as the Fight Science Lab. That's where you all have done all of your testing for many years. And then we have another lab that's kind of dedicated towards gait, running mechanics, specifically.
Hold on 1 second there, Corey.
Yeah.
You have a university lab with a fight science lab inside of it. Tell me how you arrived there. Obviously, you working closely with fighters had something to do with it, but
Yeah.
I don't see a university very accepting of doing something like that. How'd you go about that?
I think it was really just finding like minds. We have a great group of faculty members, professors, ranging from the PsyD program to neuroscience to psychology to sports psychology, sports nutrition, general nutrition, exercise physiology, biomechanics. So weirdly enough, we kind of have this weird niche in this group that have all spent a lot of time in the research space with these fighters. I would say in terms of sort of the ringleader, I kind
There
of
was some personal attraction to
personal
fighting
attraction,
too. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I think I sort of took the reins, or maybe, realistically, this is an underrepresented population when you look at scientific literature. I mean, there's not a lot there, but also look at the UFC. What do we got? 30 years? I mean,
yeah, just
turned 30, right? Yeah. Where you go to like American football, rugby, soccer, all those things.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of data. Still growing. That field's definitely grown, but there was nothing in the area of fight science. So I think bringing your population in, and more specifically, like just bringing in the elite fighter.
Right.
I mean, really, because that's the thing. You go look at some of this data. It's, when I first started this, or I should say co-started this, not by myself, with the Fight Science Lab. A lot of wrestling research. You saw that, especially in the collegiate ranks. You were seeing a lot of stuff in weight cuts, and they've changed some rules and things like that. lot of BJJ, little bit of judo, a little bit of karate. But in terms of MMA, all you ever saw was amateur or even sometimes professional. But then you'd look at the record, like the average record, and the subject in there was, 1-4.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So,
it wasn't a lot of athletes either.
yeah.
In this fight game in the early days.
No. And so that was kind of the thing for me. It's like I have access to an elite population in terms of the people that we've had through that lab. I mean,
And some pretty good brains.
Yeah,
On the
and
university
a
side
lot
too.
of
That's
different
invaluable.
people.
Yeah.
yeah, we have like Dr. Jose Antonio. He's the CEO of what's known as the International Society of Sports Nutrition. So he's kind of been, he and I feel like we're sort of at the forefront of this, along with another colleague, Dr. Tony Ricci, who does more the sports psychology aspect now. But previous to this, before we hired him at Nova, he was actually up in Long Island, and he was serving pretty much the same capacity I am for Killcliff and Nova, between Long Island University and Longo Weidman. So he was coaching like Chris Weidman and a lot of those guys up there. So
We're about to fight them.
yeah,
sir.
you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
you just
yes.
signed a fight to fight one of those guys. So that's how it started. We brought those minds together, and then, like I said, we brought the other people in: Julius Thomas, Dr. Jamie Tartar, a lot of different.
Julius
people.
Thomas, football.
Yeah, football player.
Oh,
Right?
cool.
She's a football player.
No, he.
Julius.
Yeah. So Julius.
Not Julia.
That's what it sounded like.
He
Julius.
was tight end, right?
Yeah, tight end.
You
Sounds
would know him.
Tight end,
Yeah.
Pro Bowler for Peyton Manning at the Broncos. He was out there at the Broncos for a long
The
time.
year he won?
I don't remember. I don't know, but I
He
know
played a while.
Played a while. Not really, but he retired.
Maybe a potential guest, Mike.
Yeah,
Put that on the list.
29. For sure.
Yeah,
Put him
well,
on the list, man. He's almost finished up with
PhD?
his PsyD. So he's
All right.
going more clinical, away from the. He did the research, and I think that's kind of funny because he was doing it with me, and I kind of scared him away from it, where he wanted to go in the clinical world, and that's kind of his thing. But it's one of those things that I think this is always cool when I think about the Fight Science Lab. There was a point in time where, again, this is public record, but you look at Julius, and he was, I believe, getting offered the franchise tag by the Miami Dolphins. So I don't know what that would run for a tight end, 5 or 6 years ago, but we're probably talking $8 million plus, right?
I mean, pretty.
Plus 8 to 12.
doing
I
pretty-
don't
a lot
know.
well than others.
Yeah, and sometimes they rate them as wide receivers based on catches, so I don't know. But I always laugh because I'm sitting here looking at him, sitting in my office, interviewing guys and doing like NIH Toolbox, doing like the personality traits. That was more like his aspect, analyzing the personality traits of these guys.
How they fit the Nova program?
Well, no. I'm talking like the fighters. When the fighters
Oh,
came in
okay,
specifically,
okay. Yeah,
we had
I
a
got
grant. We had a grant together, and that was sort of his job. And I sat there and looked, and it was like the worst job out of every job. But here he is sitting there from, I don't know, 10 in the morning till 5 at night. When I'm sitting here thinking like, you could be out here running routes across the street, catching balls, and here he is, doing this thing. So he's been an awesome addition to what we have going on there, and understands the athlete.
Tell me about, you go through the education part of things, but there's always some sort of adjustment, I feel like, whenever you go to the functionality or you go to applied strength and conditioning. Everything's not necessarily by the book, right?
Can't be.
Tell me what you've learned over the past several years and where there may be deviations between the education and the application of it.
For sure. I'll give you the best example because I know the most influential experience that I had going through this in terms of my mindset on what you were just talking about. I think a lot of, kind of my upbringing and stuff like that, I think following the book, following the guidelines, doing things perfectly by laboratory standards, textbook standards, the data.
Yeah.
I let myself get a little too deep into that, I think, early on. And as I sort of transitioned into academia, and then I got down here in South Florida, I had an opportunity to work with the University of Miami. So I was able to be on their football staff for a year and a half, basically a volunteer position. But when I was in this role, there was the head strength and conditioning coach, Andre Swayze. He was at the U for years. He's the guy that, when you look at every player that went through the U in the highlight years, he's the guy that
Taylor to Dion.
Yeah.
No, Dion went to Florida State.
all of them. And here was the cool thing about him. In the off season, all those guys were back, which I don't see that a lot of places.
NFL?
Yeah, all the NFL guys. You know, like you'd see Jimmy Graham, Jonathan Vilma, all those guys were back training with Coach Swayze. And here's kind of the thing. I think Swayze and I, you know, everything I did was by the book. A lot of what he did was by experience. You know, I think when you actually look at his background, I don't think he was an exercise science background.
Is he one of those like bigger, old school, bigger, faster, stronger guys?
Big time.
Bench press, squat.
Big time.
Okay, gotcha.
You know, hang clean, power clean, and that kind of thing, and a competitive atmosphere. And I remember kind of sitting here looking at the programs and looking at those things and thinking, like, you know, I don't think I'd program this way. I don't think I'd put this in this order. I don't think I would do this way. And I see it, but then I go out on the floor and I see, you know, realistically what I see is 100 type A alpha males following everything he said to a T. Whatever he said, they did. And I honestly believe this. I believe that you could have put that entire football team up on the roof blindfolded, and if that guy said jump, they would. I learned a lot in that moment, that perfection in terms of what we're doing on paper and laying things out the right way and putting these programs together doesn't always dictate the outcome and the results. Him creating competitive environments, creating challenging things where they have to work together and do that kind of thing, and, you know, really just challenge them as men, that was big for me to see that. And it kind of got me out of that quote unquote perfection, like trying to do everything perfectly.
Sure.
And so that was kind of the biggest thing for me, where that changed drastically. You know, I still believe in the science, but I still think you have to take it with a grain of salt because, you know, again, you read MMA science and they say 30 professional MMA athletes, and we all know, like, that could mean a lot of things. That could mean the guy over here making his debut at Titan FC. And does that apply to 30 fight veteran, you know, 30 UFC fight veteran Michael Johnson? And so you got to really take those things with a grain of salt, and hopefully you can just apply something out of that to the whole
The
match.
Godfather of Nova, pretty much. There we go.
The Godfather.
So I know you played ball in college, and the one I want to have guests on. I really want to like dig deep into like them being the pros and like their field.
Yeah.
What brought you to like wanting to do sports science? Like, was that always a thing, or did they just kind of fall in your lap and you're like, oh, I'll just go this route and figure it out from there?
No, I think it was something I was always intrigued by. Like I can remember being younger buying. you know what's funny too? Like I can remember being younger and buying like Flex magazine and stuff like that, trying to figure out how to write these programs, even though all I was learning was bodybuilding programs.
How younger? How much younger? Like high school young, or even before that?
Middle school to high
That
school.
sounded a
Probably.
little suspect. I don't know.
I kind of think, like, I think I kind of started with, what, buying Flex magazine?
Yeah, at a young age, like, what were your parents thinking? Like,
Hey,
they were buying them for you, so they just like, okay, Corey, like, here.
You know something funny? You know, you bringing this up.
Men in Speedos.
You know, the
Corey,
last
huh?
person I had this same talk with, Anthony Rumble Johnson.
Yeah,
Same thing. He was telling me the same thing. He was saying
See?
he had a whole stack of those things too. And then remember, after he got done fighting, he went into
like
the
bodybuilding.
So he was always telling me that he was
like,
buying those when he was a kid too. And
I
he
can
and I
see
were
that in
laughing.
him.
But yeah, so I was always into it. I had a really influential strength and conditioning coach in high school, a guy named Coach
Really?
Stacy.
That's rare.
Right, that's rare.
That's
right?
very
Small
rare,
town Ohio.
yeah.
So I had a guy, Coach Joe Stacy, still doing it at Tiffin Columbian High School, man. He's just amazing. Actually, just, you know, West Virginia, going back to the roots, last time I talked to Coach Stacy, he was talking about a kid from our high school that he spent a lot of time with that's wrestling over at West Virginia right now. Doing really well too. I forget what weight.
Yeah, I wish I could think of his name. I can't.
Conley is
Something
Conley. I don't remember his first
qualifier.
name. Yeah, and
He might be a Big 12 finalist.
yeah. So Coach Stacy.
Madness coming up. Right?
Yeah. So he's been there forever, and that was pretty influential to me. So I knew going into college right away, like, exercise science was going to be something that I did, pursued whatever I could do in that area, continued on to my master's, and then my PhD was exercise physiology. So it's pretty much been a part of what I do for as long as I can remember. You know, like you were saying, I played college ball, but like I wasn't that good, but I was good in the weight room. I was a weight room guy. I was great at that. That was
you're the one
that was the stuff I was
lifted
good at. But you throw me out in space and you put 5 yards on either side, I'm going to break my ankles and miss the tackle. Like, I just know. But if you put a barbell in front of me, I would throw that thing over my
But you
shoulder.
played good enough to get a scholarship, right? What school is this? What college?
Ashland University.
Okay, Ashland.
Yeah, Division II, Ohio.
I went to a D2 school.
Yeah, where'd you go?
Central Methodist.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I played football from my freshman year, and then I got in trouble.
Running back, right?
He went to a couple universities. Give him a little
I was
break.
running back. If no bullshit, no bullshit. I had it planned out. I was gonna leave after my freshman year and go try to walk on in Alabama. I was like close to 200 pounds. But I got in trouble. Fucking wrong place at the wrong time. Like smoking weed in this, of course, smoking weed, right? Fucking, of course, in this dumbass basketball player's dorm room, and he had these like 2 little fucking high school girls from like the local high school in his room.
You know, wrong place at wrong time implies that you were like unlucky. Right?
I mean, yeah, you can say it. Just let me break the story down because it's a fucked up story. And I mean, but we never would have gotten here. But we never would have gotten to this point if this wouldn't have happened. Like, seriously, like, who knows where I've been? I've probably been fucking millionaires in the league. Fuck with y'all
What would you been playing?
motherfuckers, bro.
Then you wouldn't have been on Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, you know.
What would you been playing? Running back?
Running back, you know, I was fucking. All right, so.
But I feel like you're a guy they would have moved to DB at some point.
No, they drafted
or
me
to
for
the slot.
DB.
They moved him to
They
the slot.
recruited me for DB.
Yeah.
And I told him I wanted to run the ball. I was like, no, I want to run the ball. I don't want to play defense really. But I played like offense like with a defensive mindset. You know, it was kind of like that's how I ran the ball. So anyway, back to the story. So we're done smoking, yada yada. I leave the room, and I guess the little kid left like some weed in his room, like a little bit. I left. I seen the HR guy coming up, the guy that walks through the dorms. I seen him coming up. Yeah, all right. I seen him coming up, so I dipped off and went to the bathroom, you know, and I stayed in the bathroom. I was like, I'm gonna just stay in here. Maybe they're gonna leave or go somewhere else. And I come out the bathroom like 5 minutes, and he's caught everybody in the room. So they're outside, you know? And he's like, he looks down at the hallway at me and he's like, hey, were you in this room back here? Nope. And I looked at him and I saw my teammate behind him. It was this DB from California. He like got in trouble at some D1 school, so he had to come to our school and play. And he just had the look on his face like he snitched on me already. You know, so of course, like, why
Mike
in the,
was with us.
and why of all reasons I decided to tell the truth at one time. I go, yeah, I was down there. I wasn't doing nothing. No, he's like, oh, come here. And then I get in trouble, guilty by association. Yeah. That's what they called it. And I couldn't like fight it. I couldn't do shit, nothing. And they said I couldn't be a full-time student or play football sophomore year.
Kicked you out for that?
Yeah. So I was like, he was like, yeah, you can't be a full-time. I was like, what? You gotta think this is like
you gotta
think this is like 2000,
dorm, right?
This is like 2004, 2005.
And then you ended up where?
And then I ended up back home. I left school and had like a second spring break.
Where'd you go wrestle?
Merrimack.
That was before that, or
that was after that.
Okay.
Then I went to Merrimack, JUCO, and that's where I wrestled, and I couldn't be like a full year because I didn't have eligibility because Central Methodist wouldn't give me my credits. They fucking held them ransom for like 5 G's, bro. I'm like, y'all can have the motherfuckers,
better been a good joint, dog.
Right? I know, exactly. And it was some dirt swag ass weed from fucking Fayette, Missouri. Like, regardless, like the dude has some little girls in the room that he never should have had. And I should have lied like I would have did in that case, but I thought I was fucking, But no, I thought he told on me, bro. I was just like, I got caught for dumb shit. But we never would have been here. We never would have been here.
Now
but
think about this though too. Now, Greg, you got a little bit of football experience. What was your what was your experience? It's little.
I played high school football. I was 2-time all-conference defensive back, and then I also had a private workout for the Pittsburgh Steelers upon graduating college. Yeah.
So here I am playing 5 years, and I don't even get looked at by a Canadian squad.
So to your point, Mike. Here we are sitting here.
I know, and I heard about that. What are you doing here? I heard you was in the paper and everything. Yeah. Local superstar Greg Jones gets a workout.
Runs 40-yard dash.
Yeah. What happened? Like they just thought he could tackle, and he got his ass ran over.
Oh, I get the pause on you going down.
Yeah. So what happened? You weren't fast enough?
No. I started coaching, and I was hurt. I was supposed to go back for training camp, and I had a groin surgery. And I just never revisited it. And I'm a wrestler, man. I'm a coach, and I just started coaching. That's all.
Because you ain't got speed. Because I remember that. Remember that fucking relay we ran on the Ultimate Fighter. If you could pull that up, look up the Ultimate Fighter Black Zillions.
I am on record for
American Top Team
4 seconds.
Coaches Challenge.
4-4.
It's the 4-1
I
track
ran a-
meet. You remember that story?
I ran twice. I ran
saw
4-4,
and-
4-4-5
him
back
and
to back.
Tyrone Spung. Okay, so we needed four.
shit.
We needed 4 people for this race. Him and Tyrone Spung, because they wouldn't let me run, and I was fighting Edson Barbosa around this time. So like, nah, you can't run. Like you fuck around and get hurt. Like they're gonna get in trouble. So I was like, all right, whatever. Greg and Tyrone needed to figure out who was gonna be the fill-in. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we solved it in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So
You raced Tyrone first before
They
you
lined up. They lined up.
Smoked 'em.
They lined up. They lined up to race. All right.
Wait, I didn't know this part. All I
Yeah.
saw was the run on the track. I didn't see how you chose. who
yeah.
I
got-
smoked
yeah.
Tyrone's ass in the
So
parking lot, man.
they line up in the parking
No way.
lot and they go, okay? Greg beats him like the first like 10, 15 steps. Okay, it looks like he's gonna smoke him.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, it's no question. Tyrone, you're out. Like Tyrone needed a little time to get up. He's big, you know. So Greg comes out there. We're thinking we're good. We're thinking we're gonna win the race.
I'm gonna tell you what really happened.
This motherfucker starts getting smoked. I can't remember who did. Tiago Moises was their first leg, pass off to the second leg. Greg gets it, and this motherfucker fakes a hamstring because he starts getting rolled. He fakes like he
one?
pulled his hamstring.
I thought he really pulled
No,
it.
he was like,
Here's the thing.
he
Here's the
said,
thing.
"Fucking pull
I
it
just
up."
watched this last week, and that's a lie. I was on his ass. I was gone. I was gone. We was neck and neck, and then the sniper hit me.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
happened.
he
Sniper's
started
real.
getting
I
smoked.
think it was Sabah.
Was it? It might
it
have
was
been.
about a
Yeah,
month.
see, that's
Yeah.
who you lost to. He smoked you.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
man.
didn't lose.
Just think
It
about
was-
that.
did you
Just
find
think
it?
about
But
that.
look, hey, Mike,
Uh,
here, check this out though. The last, I don't know, 20 meters or whatever. Only thing I'm thinking is, motherfucker, you better not fall, because that would have been some shit.
He started hobbling and
Who'd
wobbling. and
you
then,
pass off to, Jason?
No,
yeah, Jason.
because
Yeah,
because
and
Glenn
Jason
had to be the
took off.
fourth leg.
And you know Jason just getting those arms going.
And
he
I
was
told
going.
him
He
I
was
was
going.
yelling. I was yelling. He should have just kept running.
Yeah.
It just ran past. It ran past Dan and everybody.
Well, let's
and
just
Glenn
call it what
won.
it is. With Glenn as the relay, we wasn't gonna win that race. No way. I don't care if I.
Gosh.
You know what
Y'all
I'm saying?
had to be in the league quite a bit.
Yeah.
Oh my
But
God.
Corey, tell us about you with a football background, applying that education to MMA. I asked a similar question earlier, but to dial it in a little bit for MMA fighters. I know it's difficult to lay out a full schedule and a program for these guys. So how do you make sure you hit the guys you need to hit?
All right, so I think that's kind of
Pause.
I want to try to make this short, but I've thought about this a lot. I've reflected about this when you kind of look back at my career and stuff like that, or what I've done. I can tell you this: when I brought my football mentality into the MMA world, right? At that point, the MMA was just one-on-ones. It was privates. You coach a fighter one-on-one. That's the only way you do it. Like that's just what it was. And so I think, I started doing that a little bit and got away from the competition and tried to kind of, like I said, write perfect plans based on data. We're going to do this, individualize all that crazy stuff. And what I was realizing, or what Jake Bonacci pointed out to me, is like, dude, think about what these guys are doing. They're training 10, 11 times a week. And you're putting football volume on these guys. I can't believe you're lucky they're young, because like you get somebody up in their 30s, they're screwed. Like you're not going to be able to do this with some of these older fighters. And so that kind of reshaped a lot of what I was doing. I had to get away from volume. I mean, football is physics. Football is size. That's size and speed, right?
12, 15 reps every time.
Yeah, speed, size, all that stuff. So
you have specific targets you want to hit in a weight room, and you almost like you train their energy systems more than you do for your program. Am I close?
I think you're close. I think you're right. When I do what I would consider quote unquote conditioning, the strength and conditioning aspect, a lot of my conditioning is done between camps. Like that's where we're really trying to get people in, get people bought in, to get in right
Big on the
away.
foundation.
Like Mike, right? He was here 2 days after his fight.
Yep.
That gives me a real chance to really start pushing the conditioning, because I know once we get into camp, it's not realistic. It's just not, right? I'm getting them after a really
You
tough
have to
wrestling
pull back
practice.
volume, yeah.
I'm getting them after a really tough sparring session, or whatever the case might be. So to what you're saying, I always like to do this. I like to condition in between camps. And so I'll say this for kind of my strength and conditioning people out there. I don't think I ever have a real off season. That's not a real thing in MMA.
No.
No, it's impossible.
The turnaround's too quick, short notice fights, always being ready.
Off season is a week after the fight.
So I always consider my between camps what most people in the strength and conditioning world would consider preseason, when you're going into the preseason. So a lot of that is just really peaking that conditioning, peaking some of those things, really just tightening up the joints, tightening up the muscles, building a foundation.
You're hoping to get 3-4 weeks?
3-4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
I want to build capacity. I want capacity. I want to be able to build an athlete's tolerance to be able to handle the stresses of camp. That's my goal. When we get into camp, that's where I make the switch. I get out of the conditioning world, and I know these guys don't know that because it feels like conditioning to them, but very strategically, whether we're using their heart rate data from the lab, whether we're just using basic time, work to rest ratios, everything we're doing is based around the energy systems, trying to efficiently use all of the energy systems. And so, like, I can give you an example of something like wrestling, right? I watch what you're doing. I watch the goes. I watch the explosiveness, but there's also the isometric part. I think a lot of what wrestling turns into is a lot of glycolytic work. You just see a lot of that work that just falls in between that 15 to 30 to 45 second.
Did you just say, you said a word I never heard before. You know that word?
Glycolytic?
Glycolytic?
Is this something with sugar?
Something to do with
There you go.
glycogen?
Yeah, you got it, Mike.
And fatigue, right?
Carbohydrates.
Yeah.
That's where you make the transition into start using like the carbohydrates as your energy system. Still anaerobic, so it's still explosive bouts. It's still powerful bouts. But I see a lot of that in your wrestling practice. Like I always see that. I know you do some explosiveness, but then you usually contrast it with some isometrics and hold some positions. And these work to rest, they always last like 15 to 40 seconds. I think
there's a misnomer too that everyone thinks conditioning, so you have to do this long block of time. But I think there's a certain conditioning that occurs between short repetitive volume that kind of adds up.
For sure. There's no doubt about it.
And that's kind of what I try to achieve also from a wrestling standpoint. I'd imagine you also do too.
For sure. That's it.
Or you run them into the ground, right?
It's even really rare that, for me, it's really rare that we're even going to do like aerobic work. Like cardio, like
explain that part.
Aerobic work meaning like oxidative. When you look at the actual fight, the fight, there's documented research on there that pretty much shows that the fight kind of goes high intensity for about 15 seconds, and then you're gonna have about a 30 to 45 second, not rest, but there's things that you're doing, there's strategies, there's foot movements, there's places, you're taking breaks somehow, not always, but that's kind of the majority of the sport. So I think people believing that they have to build this crazy like aerobic base, it's not necessarily
not necessarily, but if you can go hard for a minute in something like, that's pretty damn good. Like
it's really hard.
Something really hard, hard to push for a minute, and then maybe like a 30, 45 second break, and then try to hit that again. Like I try to do like some things like that by myself, like it's like extra work. And I think because in a fight, hell, you could get somebody that comes after you for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Right.
I've kind of done it almost, like I've had it done to me, shit. Like, so it happens. And in that sport, it's just like, how do you even like train somebody to be prepared for something like that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, it's one of those things too, where you really look at it, and let's just talk about, 2 minute goes, right? Let's relate that to like track and field. What would be a 2 minute competition? 800, right? 800 hurdles at the highest level. Yeah. Think about how much output they're putting in for that full 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So I guess here's kind of the takeaway. If that was something that we're training, how could I set you all up to be able to do those 2 minutes at that same intensity? And that's the science behind it. That's where the work to rest, the right volume.
Because I can't go balls to the wall for the 2 minutes.
Well, you could, but if I'm going to do multiple reps, then I'm going to have to. I'm
not gonna make it past 35, 40 seconds if I try to go balls to the wall from start to finish. Yeah, I mean, even on the bike, I mean, who knows if I go.
You can do it on the bike.
I mean, if you start off at that high intensity, there's no way I'm going to keep that same intensity for that 2 minutes. So I would have to start at a pace and build up, and try to hold that pace for as long as I can.
But what's that pace? That's the question, right? That's where I'm sitting here telling you guys.
Is it 80% capacity?
Well,
Is
we're
it
gonna
90?
get
Is
to
it
100.
What am I always saying to you though? Like, I don't want you guys to fall off, right? I always say, don't take it off and fall off. I don't want that fall
try to
off.
keep it up as high.
Keep it there.
Yeah.
Keep it where you can for the 2 minutes. So that'll take care of itself. Like, if you go 100% from the start and try to carry that for 2 minutes, it's not going to happen. But if you can find about an 80% and keep that for the full 2 minutes, then we've accomplished what we've wanted. And that's where it works.
You said that's the science of it, but I would argue it's a little bit of the art of it, because I think what we're talking about is the deviation, the personal deviation that you make from the research, applying that to
for sure,
to the weight room or to the track or to whatever. So it's
like,
kind of both.
Energy system conditioning is strategic too. Like you said, there's so many guys like Jason Jackson. I can remember Jason, and I'll tell you this, for 6
Talk about his little ugly ass too much in this podcast. He ain't even been on it.
But he hasn't.
Like, no, we just talk about this motherfucker all the time. I just thought of that. Like, we need to stop talking about this motherfucker.
I think about,
shut up. Bro.
Yeah, but right now he's doing. Right now, we're proud of him right now.
Yeah. Shout out, but we ain't trying to talk about your ugly ass this much.
But I'm gonna finish this point. Jason is a guy that took me 4 years to teach him, like,
how to jump,
strategy, just any sort of strategy whatsoever when it came to strength and conditioning. Like, he was consistent.
When you say strategy, you're thinking beyond what's directly in front of you right now.
Yeah, if I told you right now that we have 12 8-second goes at 100%, and he, or whatever, 95%, 90%, we're gonna have a full thing, and then he comes out and kills himself on 1 and 2. Like, and I guess that's probably not a good example. Probably a little bit longer. If we were doing like 15 to 20 second intervals, right? And he tried to, and then that's Jason too, right? We go out and start doing like 400s or 100s or whatever we're doing on the track, man. He'd come out and burn everybody in the first one. He'd beat everybody by 60, 70 yards. Second one, he's in last place trying to catch up. Like, Jason, we got more reps. And
physiology,
now he's out there doing those hills, and he kind of figured it out. Like, okay, well, I got to go this speed if I want to do every one at the same time.
So I want to touch back on something that a lot of people don't, and a lot of people don't realize that they never think of this in MMA, that we don't have an off season.
No.
So all these other sports, like, they don't have like what is the football season? What, like 18 weeks?
Yeah,
19?
something like that, yeah.
With preseason? Yeah, somewhere around there. So they have to stay focused and stay strict for 19 weeks.
Well, everything's building. That off season is huge. The off season's where you do the most work.
I know, and I get that, but they don't have to be locked in necessarily. They don't have to be locked in to perform. On a game, like they don't have a paycheck, they don't have their performance like waiting on the line. Like, you got to perform on this certain date, so they can, in off season, they can pretty much be like off minded as long as they're making their workouts.
Lift weights and go to school.
Yeah, that's it. Like, lift weights and go to school. That's nothing. That's simple. So what I'm trying to do is explain to the people that don't really know that how hard it could be for somebody to stay locked in all year round. For however long they fight at a high level.
3-4 times fight 3-4 times a year.
A year, hopefully, if you're lucky, you get 4 in a year.
And here's
but
what I
also,
let's call it 3.
Let's call it 3. But not only the 3 fights, it's the camps leading to those 3 fights. And I mean, we don't get much free time at all.
No.
So explain.
That's a fight
how
every
that
17, 18 weeks.
Yeah. And what I always think's crazy about it too, when you actually go look at somebody's record, you like line it up, right? We're talking about this ideal scenario where we know we have 17, 18 weeks between. Yeah, that's not the way it goes. Somebody will knock off 2 fights in about a month, and then they got one more. So it's you can't sit here and there's very few people that, I mean, really, there's very few people that have established themselves really in the UFC that have the luxury of having a full camp ever. I mean, that's just not really a thing anymore, right? 5, 6
you're
weeks.
lucky to get 8 weeks.
It's hard to get the full camp. They're given less notice. I feel like
touch base on how you think that's difficult and how you think that can be sustainable. Well, we have done it.
Yeah.
Sustainable.
No. Yeah, sustainable. And I'll say this, and I mean this before we even go into anything that I'm doing. those fighters that are the most consistent with what they do, and that means like after a fight, they showed up to strength and conditioning on Wednesday. They're knocking at the door. They want to be there. They're going to be there. Those people that stay the most consistent year round, there's commonality in that. 30 fights in the UFC, a newly crowned Bellator world champion. Look at Martin and Ungla, right? 2 division world champions. Yeah. Look at Kamaru, same thing. Like those guys, in my mind, and whoever else I missed, but y'all have something in common. You're consistent. Mm-hmm. And so like that right there is the first step into making sure that you're fight ready year round, or quote unquote fight ready, right?
Be consistent.
It's being consistent. That's the most important thing. Anybody that, and I'll say this, anybody that shows up to me at the start of their camp, like, hey, I'm in camp, now I'm here, this is a part of my thing for the next 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Don't get me wrong, those guys, there's some guys that are really, really good, but that next hump, I truly believe, is that consistency, and not just with me, with the wrestling, with the striking, building those skill sets in that time that you have, because that's where I believe you get a lot better. I don't think people give this camp too much credit.
I agree.
Yeah, camp is no such thing, and I was talking to Henry about that too. He's like, camp is like, the fuck you mean camp?
It's
like,
training,
no, like
man.
camp, there's no camp. So I was like, you know what, you're right about that. Like,
but I
fight in 6 weeks or 7 weeks.
I would argue too, Corey, along that same line, that week after you fight is perhaps just as important as any other week that you experience throughout camp.
For sure. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, you have a chance to just kick the body in the right direction, neurologically flush,
just shove everything out, right?
Get the blood flowing, get the joints moving, all the little injuries.
After that 1 week, do whatever you want, but come back, get your week.
And second thing that I think is really, really important about that week is that rebound, that weight rebound.
Win or lose.
Win or lose, right? It's
we'll just say lose, right?
Yeah.
You lose, you come back, you're just right back in it.
Yeah.
And I don't think you dwell on it as much.
See, that's so crazy because I feel like it's harder to come back from a loss for a lot of people.
Of course.
For sure. Well, of course. I mean, I know, but I mean that's saying like the obvious. But yeah, but where I'm trying to get is like you win and you want to get back in the gym, you want to get back to training, and you lose, like you can get real like down and frustrated and fucking depressed.
Does it have to be that way though?
No,
does it have to be that way?
It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't at all.
Right.
But it feels like
personal.
It feels like
choices.
personal. It feels like coming back in the gym after a loss. You almost. I don't want to say the word embarrassed because like people lose and win. It's just
a little bit though.
It takes a little bit away from you every time.
Yeah. No.
Well, and I've been with you for a long time, Mike, and I will say this: I know where you're coming from. You handle a loss the way like we would handle a loss if we got into a street fight out here and got beat up in front of a ball of our buddies. Like you treat it that way. Like I just lost in a fight.
Like, I hold on to it.
Right. Yeah. You don't view it the way I do. I view it as a competition of your skills and this and that. And if you wouldn't have made this mistake, it's no whatever. But like, I'm already past it. The day it happens, it sucks. I'm with you. But like, I'm waiting for you to get back in there just to go on to the next competition. But you kind of handle it like
that's a good way to train yourself.
You handle it like you just lost a street fight and you're embarrassed and you don't even care about anybody else. It's like my family saw me get beat up. My coaches saw me get beat up. I don't like this.
You can't get beat up and then walk in another room full of alphas.
Yeah, right?
I mean, you can. You should.
Talk shit because I like to talk shit.
Yeah,
so I know I can't talk shit for at least a few weeks. I can't say shit.
But there are a lot of guys in there, I will say. Well, I don't want to say a lot, but there are guys that come in the next week and just like, all right, well, that's behind me.
I can't. I mean, I understand that, but maybe it's that big like fight in me, just like I just can't let it go. Like I'm still holding on to losses I took like fucking 5-6 years ago, and I'm gonna see them again eventually. it will happen if shit keeps going the way I like it to go. It will happen.
My coach used to have a good saying that kind of put that in perspective. It was like it could be 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 year. It doesn't matter. It's behind you, and we just move forward. And I think a good process-oriented person, knowing where we want to get to, regardless of wins and losses, can internalize that at a decent level. So that was my little opportunity to play coach.
Yeah,
on the
which
podcast,
I do get past things, and I don't hold on to them. I use them, and I still think of them, and you don't want to dwell on shit, but you do. I mean, we're all fucking human. You do.
No, you do.
You're
Yeah,
going
but
to, regardless if you want to or not. Like
Especially
it
at
is.
night and all that. Yeah.
I do it too, you know, like I look at it and I know we do this. It's weird because I don't know, I've had this talk with you a lot where I just feel like with the numbers that we have, the amount of fights, like, you know, you're just looking at our board, right? We got 19 fights in this month or the next 5 weeks or something like that. The first week of next month,
like that,
19 fights, right? And I don't know why it seems to go this way. And maybe it's just I'm so focused on it now, like I'm so aware that this is how it went, that this is all I noticed. But like, it seems like one weekend we'll go 0-3, and then the next weekend we're going 4-0. Like, I feel like we never.
You know what's funny about
we
that,
never
though?
leave a weekend where it's like
the
1-1.
I thought that. Then I crunched the
you
numbers.
crunched the numbers.
And every time we have 4 fights, we go 4-0.
Yeah, really.
Like 3, I don't know about 3,
Right.
but every time we have 4 fights on the same card,
Not too
we go
infatuated with
4-0.
the numbers.
That's how my brain works.
I don't know, but I just look for trends to try to give me feedback on, you know, what I can do moving forward, and that's what I discovered.
That's something too. I guess that was kind of my point. Like I was saying, like, oh, you shouldn't dwell on it. You just move past it. But now I sit here and think about it. Like I meticulously go back and look through everybody's camps and what did we do? Where did we program this? What did their numbers look like? You know, what was that competition like? Could we have prevented this?
Yeah, but you do that win or lose.
Win or lose.
Yeah,
you do that one.
Win or lose, you know.
I don't dwell on my wins. I don't even think about it. I mean, I watch the tape like
I know, but why do
1,000
you do
times.
that though?
I know something I did good.
Why not celebrate
I
yourself?
know
Why do
something I do good. I like share for. Oh, I don't need to pay attention.
why do we do that to
much,
ourselves?
But I'm just
Yeah.
holding on to the bad shit. I know, and
Yeah.
I've
you're
had
not-
that thought in the past. Like, no, that ain't good. Like, you did something. Oh, you gotta take that. Look at this.
Pat
Hell yeah,
yourself
keep
on the
watching.
back. It's
keep watching,
okay,
keep
man.
doing it. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
I mean, you're not gonna go out and like throw a party for
Yeah,
yourself.
maybe it's
but-
like I see something as in like I need to do that better, so I kind of hold on to it. Maybe
But I
that's
don't
the
know
way I
what
wanna
that
be
looks
better
like,
at
though.
it.
I know what you're saying, and I'm agreeing with you, but I don't know what that looks like. You're not, you know what I'm saying? You're not throwing a party for yourself. Maybe it's
in
just all
fucking
internal. It's just all
quicksand,
internal.
Sitting in quicksand.
Yeah.
And just sitting there fucking fighting shit. Just,
Corey, tell us the science of a weight loss. How close is that to the textbook?
All right. Well, there is no
To the letter?
There's no
To the letter?
There's no textbook. There's no textbook. All right. I will say this, and you know, I guess I'll get a little bragging in here. We got a position stand through the International Society of Sports Nutrition. That's going to be a pretty strong manual.
oh, what? To the what?
It's the International Society of Sports Nutrition. We got a position stand coming out on
Is that ISSN?
ISSN, yeah, on rapid weight loss. I'm just a co-author, so I didn't take the reins on this, but I did take the reins on a couple of other projects where we did some collaboration with UFC Performance Institute, Dr. French, Charles Stahl, the head director of sports nutrition out there. We took a pretty deep dive into a lot of numbers, looking at the weight cuts, and you know, I guess what we tried to do is just kind of lay out what the norms look like. And now you were saying, like, what's that look like in the textbook? Well, if we laid those norms out in the textbook, I think every RD out there would throw that textbook away. That wouldn't be something that they that they want to teach their class. That's not something they want to show their
Elaborate
class.
on that a little bit.
Well, to keep it simple, it's scary as hell. I mean, that's just really the nature of it, right? When you look at like the numbers that we had in some of those different position stands and stuff like that, if you look at like percentages, you know, you're looking at people losing upwards of 8% in the last 72 hours of their total body weight, right? 10% and some, you know, that's
What would be the ideal in that time range?
three days out.
3 to 5%.
I think a little bit higher than that. I think we're looking at low sixes.
Okay.
Is what I believe the data
Okay.
said. I think it was 6.2 would be like kind of the ideal, or I don't want to say the ideal, but what the norm was.
You break that down
with-
into weight for some people. Not me, but for some viewers that might be watching. Like, if I need to weigh 155 and somebody.
So 155 times 10 is 15. Take that about 7%. So you're looking at 11. So you're looking at like 11 pounds. Those last 3 days, which a lot of people are cutting in the last 24 hours. But
Yeah.
and when you look
That's
at that,
nuts.
72, when you look at 72, 48, 24, they're pretty much the same. It's like I think it was 6.7 was the mean.
I think
And then
that's
the next
true.
day it was like
I think-
5.9, 5.1.
I think it's
like
pretty consistent. Guys showing up on fight week that first day. there's only probably a pound or two difference between that final day weight cut.
Yeah.
So I think you're.
But I think
you're
it's
right.
and I think it's one of those things too where, and there's some people that do a really good job out there with the weight cut stuff, and that's all they do, and they specialize in that. Obviously, I have a little bit of a bigger picture kind of grasp on, like, here's your numbers, here's where you're at. Some people go out there and still pursue that and work with certain people on fight week and stuff like this. But I've had this talk with you so many times that my job, I believe, is to just send them with you in fight week in striking range. They have the plan laid out, they have those things, but if they're not in striking range when they go out there, then we don't know what we're going to get in the fight anyway. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. I should send them to you, and they're going to make weight no matter what.
I think on top of that, I agree with you in striking range, but they also obviously have to do their part leading up into that weight cut. It's really hard to cut weight with an untrained body. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So there's just so much that goes into it.
Well, and I think you look at some of the plans, like the behind the scenes stuff that you guys maybe don't see, but like some of the heat acclimation that we're already starting to do with guys 5 weeks, 6 weeks out and stuff like that. It's not a lot, but just giving some general instruction of like, hey, we need to do some long distance stuff. We got to do some heat acclimation. We got to get used to what you're going to do. If you're going to be in the sauna, get in the sauna. If you're going to be in the tub, which I think scientifically and research-wise is going to show to probably be more effective at some point.
It was like a change. Like that came around, and I did that at one point, and I didn't really like
What's that,
how I
acclimation?
felt. No, the tub, when
tub,
a while, and like when Kenny Monday was coaching.
Do you know why? Do you know why? And I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I do think effectiveness. I think you are starting to see that as the most emerging effective method of rapid weight loss.
You just lay there and
Passive. That's another big thing. Why are we wasting any more energy than we need to in this process? And third, it's the easiest to control, right? All we need is a thermometer. All we need to do is keep that thing at 103,
See,
104
I use
degrees
that as like
Fahrenheit.
That's your last resort, right?
That's always my last resort. I like to strap up and go work out for like 20, 30 minutes, break a real bad sweat, and just like play around and fuck around and like kind of I go delirious.
Well, that fits you good though.
Well,
that fits you
and
better.
I get sit and
For
rap
sure, about
like,
45 minutes.
And I'm never going to try to change somebody. Like, that's the first thing that I do. You know what? I kind of learned this. I think this is funny, but I kind of learned this sort of the hard way it was Michael Chandler. This is the first time I've really kind of had a long talk with him back in the day. And, Michael Chandler's he's a big guy. He cuts a lot of weight. And I remember just seeing those numbers and seeing where he's at and thinking like,
he's miserable and cranky and
this
yelling and shit.
This
and
is
like,
crazy. And I kind of remember Michael. He made a statement, and it holds true. He's kind of like, well, I'm at this time maybe 20-3 and 2-time champion in this division. So why is everything I'm doing wrong according to you? And he kind of said that to me, and it was good for me to hear that. Yeah. Like, it was a good step back, kind of reflect and say, yeah, he's not doing it the way I want it to be done. He's not doing it the way that I would do it. We're not doing it that way, but he's right. This has worked for him for 20-some plus.
No, I think that cuts through a lot of things, especially even as it relates to me too, is, I want things done a certain way, but ultimately we want effective.
Yeah, you have to.
You know what I'm saying? And as long as it's not debilitative, then we shoot for effectiveness. And if that doesn't line up with your opinion or the textbook's opinion, then so be it.
Yeah. And that's where I give people,
especially in this sport.
That's where I give people a lot of room. I've learned to instead of introducing my plan and my steps and my stuff first, it's more of a let's just get to, like, when we're doing the first evaluation.
Gather info. Right?
Let's gather info. Yeah. Like let's get the data. Let's get the in-body data. Let's know what the total body water is. Let's get a DEXA scan so that we have those things. Let's get a metabolism piece. Let's do the blood work. Let's do the saliva so that we actually know what these fighters, like what we're dealing with internally. But more importantly, during that first initial process, I'm listening more than anything else. And I'll do this. You guys know this. When you all leave my lab, what's the first thing I say to you? Because you guys all come hawking up to me. All right, what do my numbers say? What are this? I would say the same thing. I do not analyze data on the day I collect it. I'm too.
You said, see, I don't ask you for my numbers. Yet,
I
so I didn't know.
yeah, you're one of the guys that just trust it. Like, just okay, I know you got what you need. You're gonna do this. You go give it to Jake, or you do it, or whatever you want.
Yeah,
You just you believe in it. You don't need to know. You just want to you know that we have it and we're doing right by you. A lot of people want to know, like, what are their data? What is that? And I refuse.
But they want to know, but they don't even know.
Right.
What the fuck you want to know?
Can't even
You
translate,
can't even
huh?
understand it.
Can't
Yeah,
even
you want to know.
translate, yeah, I
Like,
know.
go back. Oh, my blood level is
But
that's what trust comes in, right?
Yeah.
I refuse to give it to them on day one for a couple of reasons. One, I want to take, when you're looking at physiology and you're looking at certain numbers, there's more than just what meets the eye. It's not just like when you're looking at like a VO2 max. It's not just the milliliters per kilogram per minute that these people are doing. Like, there's more to it where you can start to identify certain variables and things that are important and workloads and things like that. So I don't want to overlook anything when I give them their first thing. But secondly, I've spent so much time gathering information on them, like listening, that I wasn't really even paying attention to the numbers. I know I'm running the process, I know what it is, but I'm not really like, I'm not.
I gotta look at her, but I don't know.
Well, you need a little bit of history too. If a number is off, you need some history to try to explain why, I think.
For sure.
Because to give a fighter, this number is way off as compared to where it should be, and he goes, why? You need to have an answer for him.
For sure.
Whenever you submit that. And whenever you don't, that could set off, that could mess up a couple weeks of camp.
For sure. And I've done that. And I've done that earlier on too before, like where I kind of like, well, you know what? That one's probably, that number's, we need to work on that. And then when I actually got back into it, I'm like, no, we don't, man. That's fine.
Yeah, like
but
fight
then
week
that was
time,
in their head
like
for
a
6
time,
weeks.
like a timetable for a fight,
Right.
like
Yeah.
between 7 weeks or 6 weeks. When is the fight? 7 weeks. Yeah. Okay.
8
Did you
weeks.
get that?
No, you're 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Didn't we just talk about this?
Yeah, that's where I was getting it. I was trying to make
10
clear
weeks.
but yeah, it's fucking 8 weeks.
7 weeks and 5 days.
See, so 6 weeks.
Precise.
6 weeks.
That's a scientist.
That's not 6 weeks. That's
I don't fight last week.
That's 8 weeks.
But is that 7th week fight week?
You have
We're
7
talking about
we have
time
7 weeks,
before you fight.
Yeah, we have 7 weeks to
Talking
prepare.
about work time.
And we have 1 week of fight week.
Work time.
That's all work, dog.
That's all
So
work.
I work.
Fight
But
week's
fight
work.
week's rehearsal.
Oh, that's work
I
too.
just go through. It's like Black Swan.
Yeah.
No, that what it? No,
Nah, I can't.
Ballerina, the Cinderella movie?
Nah, I
Yeah.
can't.
It's not a
remember
Cinderella
that.
movie.
Yeah,
It's a
it's kind of ballet
movie.
movie. There we go.
it's
Cinderella
dark.
ballet a little bit.
It's not
It's
Cinderella.
dark.
Cinderella's
It's
a
Black
happy show.
Swan. Yeah,
Cinderella
no,
Man's dark.
not Cinderella Man. It's just a ballerina.
Oh, I don't know.
That's
that
a dark
shit.
But it's
movie.
a dark one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real
Yeah,
dark movie.
it's real dark. That's why I had to bring that. Of course, I got the wave cap on.
What's the name? I'm gonna watch it tonight. What's the name
Black
of it?
Swan. I
Black
got the
Swan.
wave cap on
Hey,
because I'm
that's what
growing
Johnny-
dreads
That's what
out.
Johnny Depp.
Everybody.
No, it's
Natalie Portman.
Yeah, Natalie
Yeah.
Portman.
I'm
And
thinking
I'll
of Black Mirror.
No, hey, and I'll tell you this too. You
Black Mirror is
watch
good,
Black
but-
Swan, like that's a movie that can get, even though it gets real crazy and dark at the end, but there's like a part of it that applies to high level performance. I mean, she's just one of the best ballet
she's pretty good.
you know,
in the
yeah.
movie, yeah.
in the world
I
trying to
suggest you
achieve
watch
that goal.
Human
She-
performance is fascinating, man.
It's fascinating.
And all the different
Stay on your
variables that go
toes.
along with it, man. It's cool.
It's fascinating. It's changing the landscape of what it looks like now compared to 7-8 years
How do
ago.
you think we
So
compare? How do you
different.
think we compare to other athletes now?
MMA?
Yeah.
And what kind of comparison?
Well, athletes. You know how people compare like the basketball players to football. You know,
like as far as executing athletic ability?
yeah, like we always see like the football players hit pads and some of them look goofy as a
look goofy.
motherfucker. I wish I could remember. Mark Ingram's not bad. I've seen him. He's not bad, but his
MMA
he's like a
fighters
hook
are
punch.
terrible athletes, in my experience.
I agree.
MMA
I
fighters
agree,
are terrible
because they're
athletes.
not athletes. I
They
always
can't-
say this.
Yeah, they
They're
don't.
not.
They don't know how to bend
Nobody
their
knows
knees.
how to run.
They
Nobody
kind of
knows how
know
to
how to
catch a
bend.
ball.
Yeah, just
But
all
everybody's
kinda
like, "Oh,
shit.
I'm athletic." It's like, no. To me, athleticism is doing that. Like, can you run and jump and catch a ball? Can you like?
That's how I feel
Yeah,
too.
like,
right?
are you agile
Or
to do things?
you can
Yeah,
pick a
like-
sport up and be okay at
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
So that's where I feel like.
That's what I consider. That's my definition of athleticism.
see,
It's
here's
like,
the-
could you pick up a racket? Could you pick up a
Yeah,
ball and actually?
but see,
do that?
here's the thing: some of these guys from the other sports can't do MMA. They
There's some
can't
truth to that,
fucking hit
too.
pads. They can't wrestle. But like, not like you give them a week and they can't do it. But maybe if you give them time, then of course, they'll pick it up. But if you take a fighter that's kind of a good athlete and he can go do something kind of on the short time he has it, You know, then it's kind of a difference.
All right, but think about this, right? All right, and so maybe we'll use football as an example, right? What's your objective? Your objective is to never rotate, right? Unless you're throwing the ball. Outside of that, you want square shoulders. You want your feet under you, all right?
Yeah.
You want to be.
Rotate
you
your
want to
hips,
be.
you're
always gotta square,
right,
yeah,
right.
you
Like
can't really
DBs a little
rotate.
bit would be the only ones that
To
do that. That
rotate,
just turn
yeah.
over their
Rotation is
hips.
power, though,
but
right?
you only want to rotate once a play if you're going to do it, right? You got to make that jump and
gotta
turn
flip
your
your
hips,
hips one time and go.
Now
Yeah.
you're in a straight
Yeah,
line,
yeah.
right? Or if you're in the interior, you're just preventing. You don't want anybody to do it. That's just the nature of the sport, right? You're creating where you all have to learn how to rotate super effectively, no tension throughout your
And
body,
efficiently.
bringing that transition of power all the way up from the ground, and at that very last minute, tense. Like that's different, right? There's other sports they're tense at a lot of times because I might be getting hit from over here, I might be getting hit from here, so that's where it's different. But in terms of athleticism, you all are terrible.
Terrible.
Don't
athlete.
say you all. Say
not
them.
you. No, right?
I know,
them.
man.
You
There's
got-
all
I don't
exceptions.
fall in that
You have
category,
there's all
bro.
exceptions.
No, your footwork, like in my, from what I don't know anything about the actual like fighting part of it, but
Because they can say the same thing about wrestlers,
Right.
And
Yeah,
I don't fit that.
Yeah, I know
don't
that.
fit
Nah,
that,
I'm
man. I
not
can
better.
move,
Yeah,
man.
I could.
the wrestlers they
I
all
can
run
catch.
the wrestlers all run the same.
Oh,
the
yeah,
toes
the
kind
legs.
of point in. They kind of sit there. And here's what I think: the BJJ people that come from that. Here's what I think's so funny about
No
that.
athleticism at all. Maybe soccer. A little bit.
They're probably the
just
worst
thinking
athletes.
about running.
BJJ's the worst athlete.
Thinking about running mechanics, right? It's opposite leg, opposite arm. It just goes that way.
Yeah.
They do it like same knee, same. I don't know.
I've seen. Have you seen?
I
Have
can't
you,
do it.
Have you ever seen one of them
consistently?
consistently.
Have you ever seen one of them try to do like high knees? Like,
Yes.
I've like did warm ups with them before. You
You're like,
watch,
what
it's
the hell?
same
What
leg,
the
same
hell?
foot. They like, I'm like, can't do that on purpose.
Do you know what? You know what a lot of them do too? When I start to yell at them about it, I always catch this
They start
transition.
skipping.
No, they put their hands like this and touch it like that. They touch that.
I think I've seen Herbert right
Herbert
now.
Burns
To
does
run?
that. Yeah, he
To
does do
run
that.
like that?
Yeah.
Like when I start to tell them like loosen up their arms, they'll just put them in a place where they just like. So that it's like, yeah, Herbert does that.
Yeah, that's funny, but that's crazy. So I don't
But
know, like,
but I will say this, and this is what is this? This might not be athleticism, but I guess this is some physiology or some just traits and characteristics while doing physical activity. There are certain numbers again that we talked about, like the books, where basically from physiological standards, when you're running these like max tests and things like this, there's certain numbers, certain parameters that the human body theoretically shouldn't surpass. Obviously, different athletes, there's people that
For
can do that
example?
a little bit
For
higher.
example?
like a VO2 max.
Okay.
They
Okay, I got you,
typically-
I got you.
They give you these parameters when you're looking at kind of that exchange ratio of like oxygen to carbon dioxide, that when you hit a specific parameter, that's the point in time in Mount Everest where you fall over dead, or go under the altitude and stuff like that, right? And what I find with this group is it's not that they necessarily go way above that parameter, but they can hit that parameter and just carry it for a crazy amount of time. Like there's definitely
That's
that
where the
piece to
mentality
it.
comes
And
in.
I'll give you an example of this. And we're actually publishing a paper on this, but this particular person is not included in that data, unfortunately. Chaz Skelly, right? Talk about Chaz Skelly. That dude, won 25 fights or something like that?
Shout out Chaz
Shout out
Skelly.
Chaz Skelly. Has one of the
he's
craziest.
a semi co-host.
Dude, has one of the best records when you really look at records. But what does, besides like his flying like triangle and 10-second wins, what's a lot of Chaz do, right? He kind of grinds, weathers the storm, grinds, weathers.
He in the Texas card.
Oh yeah,
jumped out
his
and
last
front
fight,
kicked
right?
the dude 300 kick
through the
him.
knee. But
Yeah.
that's Chaz. But you look at a lot of his tougher fights, and what does he do, man? He breaks whoever's in front of him. He literally breaks them and lets them. How awful would that feel?
Yeah,
to be
he's
that,
not enjoyable to
How
fight
awful would
or
that be to
to
be that
train
person
with.
to just sit there and think, I've hit you with everything. I've done everything I can, and I don't have anything else to do. But here you are on top of me now, just starting to feel it and stuff like that. So when you go to his numbers,
He hit you with those bullshit punches too.
Right,
from
Because
everywhere
they don't
too,
even
right?
look.
Yeah.
They're the ugliest punch, but they hit you.
like
You
when
be
you
mad.
went when you went to his numbers, like his VO2 wasn't super high, but when he started to hit some of these markers, I swear, like I don't know off the top of my head, but let's say most general population is going to hit that number, and you're going to see them fall out within the next 10 to 15 seconds. Like, you just know, right? You fighters, I would say you see some of you average anywhere between like a minute to 90 seconds past that threshold. You had somebody like Chaz, I swear he held it for like 2.5 to 3 minutes. Like, I was like, how is this possible? You see his legs flopping, he's running around, but like, afterwards he's like, how'd I do? I'm like, that was crazy. I don't know what I just saw here. So that's the thing that I think you fighters, you all have, is the demand of stresses, neurological demands on every little discipline, the conditioning aspect, the difference, the weight, like, you all handle variety, adversity, stressors. You all have a better tolerance for stress than probably any other athlete in the world. And
we're stressed 110% times of the day.
Well, I think that's where experience and, I don't want to say lack of ego, but being willing to let your ego go as far as what the data says. Sure. And let someone like Chaz Skelly or Michael Johnson just do their thing and work.
We did run some research out of the Fight Science Lab looking at, and this is not my piece, so when I speak about this, let me be. I'm a layman when it comes to what I'm about to talk about, talking about like epigenetics and stuff like that. We had a couple of great researchers in our lab, medical students that are pursuing that, neuroscience and stuff, that were looking at tissue tolerance in the MMA fighters, and there were some microRNA, some indicators, and I don't even know what they looked at. Like, to me, it just looked like it was a bunch of boxes. So there was
tissue, soft tissue?
No, so they're looking at epigenetics, so genetic traits.
Okay.
Looking at the DNA, looking at the RNA, looking at certain things, and they actually found that MMA compared to, we did like American football, we did college athletes from all the different sports, that MMA, there were two things that stuck out to me in that paper. One, in terms of inflammation and that anti-inflammatory process or the healing process, you all genetically showed a disposition for better healing than all the other athletes. Yeah, or inflammation. I shouldn't say healing, I should say inflammation. And
any markers? Any markers as to why?
Because our minds got to heal ourselves. That's why we know that we need to be healed.
The second thing was, when you looked at that same thing, it was a weird thing, but essentially it was like, and again, if I'm saying this wrong, excuse me, I'm just thinking of the way the paper said it. And I don't know if it was cause and effect or maybe just like a relationship or, but there was a genetic marker that showed that, like, for instance, if you all had like cancerous tissue in the body or something like that, you all would be able to fight that off or go through that process a little bit better.
So there's a correlation between,
we're strong-minded.
Tolerance, tissue tolerance, genetics, things like that.
That's crazy, but if you sit and think about it, it's not.
There's even a
stretch.
There was even a genetic marker called the warrior gene.
Yeah.
I think it's the COMT gene, but I could be wrong about that. Warrior. That basically says that fighters statistically have a higher genetic, I guess, a higher percentage of fighters have that warrior disposition compared to the other groups of athletes that I just mentioned, meaning y'all perform better under stress.
Yeah.
And in fact, you almost need the stress to perform.
We're completely stressed.
There's some truth to that.
Genetic marker probably goes to the sports
stress,
psychology aspect. Like, I don't remember those your inverted U's or something like that. That's more up your alley.
Also, running around and catching a ball or shooting a basketball ain't really that stressful to those guys.
Them dudes run
but
around.
Getting kicked in your motherfucking face would be pretty stressful.
Right. They run for 6 seconds and they stand for 40.
I know, right?
I ain't stressed.
Well, everybody, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Menace's Mic.
Can I say something real quick before we close down?
It
has to do with the Coach G Jones Discord.
Yeah, I always let
Coach
you
G Jones Wrestling MMA Discord.
Don't I always let this motherfucker talk?
And
I always say, I always tell you can say something.
Shit.
I give it to you.
When's the last time you got your ass whooped on a podcast, man?
You cut Corey off earlier. You cut my fucking my outro out.
I'm sorry.
Like, what is going on? You see what I deal with, Corey? You see the shit I gotta deal with this motherfucker?
You know what I do?
And he been sounding like Morgan Freeman Freeman the whole show, and I've been like, I
Because my
gotta
voice-
say
Morgan
something to this
Freeman,
dude.
Morgan
Yeah,
Freeman.
like, are you narrating the whole fucking episode? Like, yeah.
I've been yelling at y'all too much, man.
Something,
anyway-
right? But yes, we're out of here. G
On
Jones,
Sunday,
the Discord.
Sunday, March 24th, I'm doing a little pop-up seminar at Killcliff FC. If you're in the area, pop on in. You can DM me for more information. What? Hey, check me out.
All right, but
Check me
yeah.
out in a couple days. Holla at your boy.
Corey,
Thank you, Corey.
the professor, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you on here as well.
Thank you.
Everybody at home, thank you guys. Or in your car, wherever you're watching it.
Holla. You
Holla.
got sponsors?
Get Biofuel, Face Meats, Fist, Impact Dental Designs. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
What I was saying is, I don't think this episode...
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to listen up to Menace's Mic Podcast. We rollin'! Yeah!
The Corey leg